Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to The Niche Cast coming at you on a Thursday morning. We are The Niche Cache, theniche-cache.com, delivering big Aotearoa sports yarns. Big it up, big it up, big it up. Similar to the postman, postwoman, who drive little motorbikes now, little quad bikes up and down the footpath. So shout out to the posties delivering the mail, and shout out to us for delivering the Aotearoa sporting goodness. Big yarns on the website, and always cricketing podcasts on the Patreon feed as well. Shout out to the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our niche cache. Best way to support the niche cache and what we're doing. And we're recording this on a Thursday, so tomorrow evening, Friday evening, you will get the latest in Aotearoa sports via our email banger, our email newsletter, which comes to you through Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. All these links are in the description box. Big yarns, always in the email. You can prepare for your Aotearoa sporting weekend with the email. And then there's another email on Monday recapping the Aotearoa sporting weekend. As far as the big yarns we got on the website at the moment, I've done a deep dive on Christian Tuipulotu, Manly Sea Eagles winger. The Wildcard's done a debrief for the Aotearoa Breakers and why they suck. What did I do this morning? I did a Kiwi-NRL spotlight on the winners in the NRL, Penrith Panthers and Melbourne Storm, their best players. Wellington Phoenix content, there's Flying Kiwis content. Big yarns on the website. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out indeed. And we start our podcast Wildcard with a dose of mindfulness. Deliver it like a postie.
Yeah, I haven't seen the posties on the little quad bikes. I used to have those things they look like golf carts, was what I remember. But I'm on the real delivery now, so
definitely not a quad bike. It's a glorified golf cart.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I have seen them then. But yeah, don't get that on the rural route. I'm sure that saves some time though, and I'm sure it helps them make some money, which leads us into this Thich Nhat Hanh quote that time is more than money. Time is life.
Time is more than money. Time is life. Sometimes I don't even want to reply. I just want to soak it in. And that's how I'm feeling right now. What is it again? Time is life.
Time is more than money. Time is life, which makes sense when you think about like what does life consist of? It's the time that you're alive, right? So like that's in a kind of like fundamental way, that's exactly what it is. And therefore the old phrase time is money, time equals money, is like it does if you sell your time to make money, you know what I mean? But time is also more than that. There's a lot more that goes into it. And the next step from that idea, from those two contrasts, is to say that like don't just waste your life, don't just waste your time trying to get money, like actually do a little bit of living as well would probably come in handy when you've got the opportunity.
I was thinking like time is life just kept rolling through my mind. I was like, how ridiculous would it be if someone like was telling you like money is life, money is life? Like
yeah, right.
That just seemed kind of disgusting, and that person like just seems slimy in my imagination. So let's just stick with time is life. Life is time. Time is life. And let's not waste any further time, Wildcard. Let's crack into some Aotearoa sporting matters. Fun weekend coming up of Aotearoa sport. Let me just set the platter. Wellington Phoenix tonight, Thursday night. And as we know, they need to win some games. They got the Western Sydney Wanderers over in Australia. So shout out to them. This is the Will Young versus Colin de Grandhomme preamble as well. They are facing off against each other in county championship cricket. Colin de Grandhomme playing for Surrey, Will Young playing for Northamptonshire. And at the same time, right now, we've also got a couple white ferns. Susie Bates played overnight. I think she hit 60 runs with a strike rate of 130 odd in this Fair Breaks Invitational T20 tournament. So in the coming days, we're going to have Sophie Devine playing. We're going to have Katie Martin playing. And Marina Lamplow is a Hong Kong cricketer who is playing for Otago Sparks, and she's playing in the same team as Susie Bates. So that's kind of my cricket focus. Also got a little Blackcaps squad wildcard, which fantastic. Like, everyone was selected, good for them. But it's far less interesting than Will Young versus Con de Guanho in county cricket. And I'd say far less interesting than actual cricket being played, which is the White Ferns playing in that Fairbreak Invitational T20 tournament. NRL footy rolls on. Interesting matchup, Warriors versus Sharks, as well as a full Kiwi-NRL platter as well. We've got a little NBL in Aotearoa trucking along, which is quite fun because it's like most evenings you got a little NBL game. And my general feeling there, wildcard, is just the quality on display. Like, Aotearoa basketball is lit, and a lot of these dudes coming back from the NBL, or just seeing someone like Ty Wynyard, lean and mean, getting back on the scene, having played the last few seasons, but he was pretty chunky before. Now he's like really thinned out, and seeing someone like him just battling away on the Aotearoa domestic circuit. What have I missed there? What's on the radar? One thing here, wildcard, we do have Gina Fabian, part of Team City Kickboxing. She is fighting in the PFL this weekend against Julia Budd, which I think is actually tomorrow afternoon, maybe, or Saturday morning. So I'm keeping a close eye on that one as well. Anything else I missed there?
Well, there's a full slate of NRL games. I think the Warriors are on Sunday. I think it's one of those standard Dragons Warriors double headers as well. But it seems to happen way more often than it probably should, where the Dragons play and then the Warriors play, or vice versa. Plenty of Kiwi footballers involved in games over the weekend as well. There's a heap of that. There's also Sunday afternoon. Sunday might be, so let me check the exact time of that one. But on Sunday, the Golden State Warriors and Memphis Grizzlies play their first game back in Golden State. That is 12:30 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. Series tied at 1-1, and we are hoping, fingers crossed, that Steven Adams will be recovered from illness and ready to play that game. His first appearance of this playoff series. So, and based on what we've seen for the first two games, it looks like the matchup issues that kept him out of the rotation in the first round kind of flipped on their head, to where now, like, the things that Memphis very specifically needs to improve on and be better at, rebounding, getting into the paint, like, screen assists leading to that, second chance points, things like that, just coincidentally, all the things that Steven Adams is like the main facilitator of their offense for. So, definitely, yeah, if he's fit and ready to go by game 3, and we're hoping that he will be, it'll be, I don't know, about 6 days, I think, since he tested positive in that case. Hopefully get a big one from him, because, some of his most famous NBA moments have come in playoff games against the Golden State Warriors in the past. It'd be nice to see a bit of a rehash of that.
Given how our excitement levels were before the Minnesota series, I'm curious to touch base with you again about your excitement levels for that series. Steven Adams coming up against the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, he's been missing in action for a while now, first due to basketball reasons, then due to the flu. Are you actually genuinely expecting him to, get some game time and then be able to impact those things that the Memphis Grizzlies are struggling at that you just highlighted? Like, surely he gets a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, I think probably, because the guy who's been starting in his place is Xavier Tillman, and he had a really good game 2 against Minnesota, which is sort of what led him to that was basically what led to the benching of Steven Adams. Although it was obviously an idea they already had in their mind, but he was the next guy up. So he comes in, does really well. I don't actually think he played that well for the rest of the series. I think Minnesota adjusted quite quickly to a second-year center who maybe doesn't have the wide range of skills. There's a couple of things he could do quite well, a little bit more mobile than Adams as a young player, and that helped him. But I do think they figured that one out fairly quickly, and his stats for the rest of the series weren't fantastic. I thought he had a really nice game in game 2 against the Warriors, though, which is a little bit of a frisky one, because if he'd had another dud one, you'd be like, well, he's had what would that be, like 5-6 games in a row where he just hasn't been that good. Maybe we just go back quite obviously to Steven Adams, that him having a nice game then does change that a little bit. But I think just like Adams is clearly a better player, and he clearly offers more in the areas that they need in this series, whereas his deficiencies were the problem, and the other ones here, his strengths are the opposite of a problem, the solution for this series. So I'm hesitant to say expect, because coaches always do like to ride with the hot hand, and if guys are playing well, and Brandon Clark has been playing really well as the backup. He stayed the backup. They swapped first and third, and the backup just stayed in, but started getting like 30 minutes instead of 15. So I don't know the extent of it. I don't know how much Adams would come in and eat into Clark's minutes. It is possible, like Clark has the ability to play a bit of to play at the 4, so they could play some like dual big lineups and really try to muscle over the Golden State Warriors. They have seemed to have a bit of a quite a physical approach to this series. Steve Kerr called them dirty in one of his timeout interviews in the last game. So that would add up. That would stack up. I do think he will come in and take Tillman's minutes, which is about 13 odd, pretty comfortable minutes there. And I think probably the rotation won't be like, John Conchar's gotten some minutes. I think probably those are minutes that could go to Adams as well, especially if you're going to be open to a dual big lineup with Adams and Clark, so that you're not eating into Clark's time too much as well. So I'm expectant, but I'm also like, we'll see how it goes. I don't want to promise anything because I'm not making them decisions, you know what I mean? But I think it seems pretty clear that they probably should. And the tidal wave of support, like fan support, has kind of flipped 180 now to where it's like, yeah, now we need Steven Adams in this series. We didn't need him in the last series. We need him in this series. So I'm hopeful, definitely hopeful. And I would say expectant.
It is an interesting, I won't say Steven Adams didn't have COVID, or
we don't know. They don't say, yeah.
No, but or even wasn't actually part of COVID protocols. I'm not suggesting there's a conspiracy theory there, but it would be a decent ploy to have a guy who has been a major factor throughout the season, clearly isn't going to be a factor in a series or a matchup, to then bring him back as an impact player mid-series. That I don't think the Warriors are doing a lot of recon on Steven Adams right now, and then you bring him back, and we've discussed ad nauseum, how he fits into the Memphis Grizzlies structures. If you're bringing Steven Adams back into the mix mid-series, it changes a lot of things as far as how you play your basketball and how your opposition prepares to face up against you. And it's a decent matchup against the Warriors. So I don't know, I reckon there's a bit of just a little gameplay there from the Memphis Grizzlies, just with how they are using Steven Adams. So that's what I say. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I won't get that dramatic, but I do think that they are saving Steven Adams. Let me put it that way. And then just saving Steven Adams for an impactful run in some slightly more favorable scenarios. I do have a question, though, and I'm not sure if you've tapped into NBL basketball to this extent, but what we're explaining here with Steven Adams and his role is part of an NBA thing where teams are big and teams are small. Is there any... I imagine there's some of that, but is there much of that in the NBL? Because every team still has a quintessential big man. And I imagine if you go EuroLeague basketball or Australian NBL, it's a lot more traditional than what the NBA is working with right now. Is there any NBL teams who are going small without a Steven Adams type of center? Are you seeing a lot more big men because Aotearoa produces a lot of big men, so every team can have a solid, I was going to say farm bloke, but a lot of these dudes are from Auckland, so they're not necessarily farm blokes, but there's like a lot more bigger blokes on the basketball court. How do you like compare those two things that feature Aotearoa basketball through Stephen Adams and then our NBL back in Aotearoa?
Yeah, I'm not sure. You think about Stephen Adams sitting out reminded me of, by the way, the Luka Doncic situation in the Mavericks Jazz series in the first round, where Doncic missed the first, I think, 3 games with an injury that he picked up in the last game of the season, the last game of the regular season, which is one of those like, God damn moments. Right before the playoffs, 82 games, and then the 82nd one he gets injured. So he missed the first 3 games. They lost the first one, but then they won the second one, and then I think they won the third one as well to take a 2-1 series lead. Then Doncic comes back, and I think he was like, over the 3 games he played, he was like a plus 54 when on the court or something like that. Like, they absolutely torched Utah while Doncic was out there. I don't think Adams can have the same impact as that, as like an MVP candidate. But there's like, the way it's worked out, ideally he would have gotten sick, or I don't even know. It sounds like he is sick because there are protocols where maybe like close contact, household contact, whatever. But Taylor Jenkins was talking about him like having symptoms and stuff. So obviously he was sick of some degree. It would have been nice if it was a couple days earlier so we could be more sure that he'll be ready for game 3, which is the obvious time to bring him back after the like 3-day break or whatever it is for the travel. So, but hopefully because it does shift the focus, doesn't it? Like it shifts the game plan. It shifts what Memphis are trying to achieve and what they'll be able to achieve. They suddenly, having been beaten in most of these categories, even in the game they won, like out-rebounded, points in the paint, like things that they're just like feasted upon all regular season. Well, you bring back Adams and suddenly Golden State probably doesn't have that advantage anymore. They might have other advantages. You might be able to get Adam in the pick and roll and stuff a bit more, but like defensively, but that changes the course of the series. And because it's tied nicely at 1-1, thanks to Ja Morant scoring 15 straight points at the end, just like going next level there. Like, that is a really intriguing series if he does come back at that time. And that's cool. Like that does revamp that excitement we had pre playoffs, if we can get something like that. As to the big fellas in the Kiwi-NRL, I think I haven't looked at it to that extent. I haven't thought about it quite in that way, especially because at the moment a lot of rosters aren't at full strength, because there's guys who, like a lot of guys even who got knocked out of the Aussie NBL earlier, just skipped week 1 because, at least have a little bit of a break in between seasons. Others are, just coming back now, and some being filtered. So we haven't seen, like, I think Hawke's Bay, for example, were missing like 4 of their starters or something last week. So, but it seems to me that most teams do have a relatively traditional style big man, and the guy that, like, those guys tend to get big rebounding numbers in this league as well. I guess because, it's not the NBA and you don't have Steph Curry shooting 40+% from 3-point range there will be more missed shots. There will be guys who don't finish at the rim quite as easy, just because it's not the NBA. It's not the best basketballers on the planet. So you do need someone to rebound. And it does depend probably a little bit on like the personnel that you have, who you're able to sign. Like if you do happen to find someone who can also shoot, like a big man who can rebound and shoot, then sweet as, you play that style. But I think most teams at least have a priority of like someone who can clean the boards, you know what I mean? And, I think of guys like, Sam Timmons had a really good season last year. And he did play week 1, didn't he? Because I think he got a bunch of points and rebounds as well. I think he had like a 17-16 or something like that stat line, I think, from memory. So like, someone like that, or one of the guys I highlighted in the variety show, like Anzac Rossetto, is someone on a similar the young guys stepping up kind of thing. Definitely also like the players that are being developed. Yeah, definitely we develop guys who are, big bodies, strong, can get those boards and stuff. So I do think that's still something you see quite a lot at that level, and will see throughout the season. I think it's one of those with the players that are available, the talent that's there, a lot of them fit that role. And then also like the style of basketball does require someone to be able to get in there, grab the balls, and, facilitate a team being able to run back rather than like, offensive rebound after offensive rebound after offensive rebound. Like you'll see, I think we'll see plenty of that over the NBL season. I think most teams do have someone who can do that role.
But right now, if a team is playing small, it's probably because guys haven't arrived yet. So if you do see like
Jack Salt somewhere else, or
a team playing small, it's because they probably don't have anyone over 6'5" on their roster right now, but they might get that person in the coming weeks as NBL rosters settle down. Who are the Kiwis left in the NBL in Australia? What's happening there?
Well, Shea Ili and Dion Brewster got knocked out from Melbourne United. They won the first game against the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, the expansion team. Incredible that an expansion team made the playoffs, let alone then into really like grinding, battling defense. All three games really were like defense first kind of thing. Tassie just ground them out and did just enough to be able to win the second two games, to come from 1-0 down in the semis to win it 2-1, advance to the final, where they will play the Sydney Kings, who do have Tom Vodanovic. So the Kings won 2-0 in their semi against, I think it was Adelaide. And Tom Vodanovic didn't play the first game. He got about 3.5 minutes in the second game. So he was playing a little bit more than that in the regular season, but obviously playoffs, you tighten up the rotation a little bit more. And he'll probably get some minutes in the finals, but he's not going to be a key player or a major part of their rotation or anything. He's sort of like a depth guy, but if they win, he gets a ring. So he's still in the hunt. He's still in the mix. Tom Vodanovic, the last man standing in the NBL as far as the Kiwi guys go.
Big it up to him. What? We do have Will Young versus Con de Gronholm in County Cricket Wildcard. I'm just curious, were there any thoughts from that Blackcaps Test squad? Well, actually, first, shout out to Aotearoa basketball, because we talked about Stephen Adams, we talked about the NBL in Aotearoa, talked about the NBL in Australia featuring Kiwis. Fuck the Breakers. Will Young,
except for Yanni Wetzel, who left the Breakers and is now playing for a EuroLeague team.
So who cares?
But that's another big ups. Aotearoa basketball is Yanni Wetzel could be playing EuroLeague next season. Ty Webster just played EuroLeague this season as well. So I don't know if we've had two guys in that comp before. I don't know.
Big up. Are there any Blackcaps thoughts stemming off that squad announcement? I don't want to spend too much time on this wildcard, but because that is off in the distance. But I maybe bring it back to the present moment, because we do have lads in county cricket, Will Young and Con de Gronholm. Has any relevant thoughts there popped up in your mind from that squad announcement, loosely affiliated with Will Young and Con de Gronholm, or anything else that tickled your fancy? Question, whatever you want to do here. Just quickly based off that Blackcaps squad announcement.
Well, the first thing that stands out is the fact that they've picked the 20-man squad thing, which is what they did when they went to England last time, wasn't it? Because they were going to play a couple of test matches against England, then the test championship final, and they wanted a bigger squad so that, travel restrictions, hard to bring anyone over at that time, just get everyone there so every base is covered. This time it's a little bit more because they said they're going to limit it by the start of the test series. They'll cut it down to 15. But they're starting with 20 because there's a few guys in the IPL who won't be able to be there in time for the 1-2 Tahiroa warm-up games that they're going to play, which is nice, because one of the things we focused on a little bit over the home summer was about how much better prepared Bangladesh were when they had a full warm-up games to be played at Mount Maunganui before playing the first test at Mount Maunganui, which they won. Blackcaps are getting, this doesn't always happen. I think when they went and played, when they went to England a year and a half ago, whatever it was, 2 years ago, I guess, whatever. Okay, I don't even remember when was it last year, the Test Championship final. When they went there then, like the England series was kind of their warm-up series. So they didn't really need it to that extent. But they did play an inter-squad game. 20 guys calling a couple sub-fielders or whatever, and there you go. There's a game there sorted out. So they did it a little bit informally, but just like two proper first class, it sounds like it's, I think that's right. I think they're for first class stats. Proper warm-up games is beautiful, and the fact that they need to pick an extended squad is all good. Like that's effectively for the guys who, like for the 5 guys who are going to get cut before the Test series, effectively for them it's just the New Zealand A tour. Like that's also awesome. It's good development. And there's a few guys that might need it, because the other thing thinking of is like maybe they haven't picked the best most informed red ball cricketers that they could have. They've picked guys like Jacob Duffy and Michael Bracewell, who have had really good. Well, Duffy's last season wasn't quite so flash, but before that, he'd had a couple really good campaigns with Otago and worked his way into the limited overs team. Took a bunch of wickets in his T20 debut. Michael Bracewell getting into the ODIs recently as well after just an outstanding white ball summer with Wellington. Neither of them putting up the best Plunkett Shield stats to necessarily say that they're the next best batter and next best seam bowler that could have been picked. Blair Tickner's in there as well, but Blair Tickner's red ball stuff was actually quite decent because he got picked for a test squad, a wider test squad during the summer, I think, as well, didn't he? And didn't play, but was in this, like, just showing that he's part of the group. And that's and Cam Fletcher as well is in there, isn't he? As the backup wicketkeeper, which we sort of knew that had happened once before as well, hadn't it? So they'd shown that he was the next guy up for red ball stuff. So that's sweet as. But it does, like, the Bracewell and Duffy, because at first I saw Bracewell selected for Blackcaps and I was like, sweet, which one? Like, because you can make a case for either one. Which one of them's in the test squad? I assumed it was probably going to be Doug, but it was Michael, so whatever. But it feels like the old Blackcap strategy of like, it's hard to get into their group, into their wider player group. That's tough. Like some guys have had to wait, like Michael Bracewell's had to wait till he's like 30, 31 or whatever to get that opportunity. But once you're in, they'll give you some leeway. And it sort of feels like they've picked guys who have worked their way into the wider group in other formats, chuck them onto the test thing because they're like in the club. Maybe Michael Bracewell's play. I think he averaged like 19 or something with the bat. And he's not really a bowler.
I've got all the stats here, World Cup.
Yep, so go through it, please.
We've got Michael Bracewell, 190 runs at an average of 19 this year. Last season, 40. Did score 4 centuries last summer, or the previous summer, and 26. Well, this is interesting. So, like, starting in 2015, these are his batting averages: 24, 17, 19, 47, 26, 40, 19. None of that screams out, give me a test call-up. And it's equally as volatile for Jacob Duffy. So if we go back, 2015, bowling average, 46, 51, 23, 46, 22, 20, and last season, 55. So those things have all happened. They're all quite interesting. As you said, I think this is just more about building out the group of cricketers for Aotearoa. So my advice here is to pay less attention to the stats and just appreciate that these dudes are getting a decent crack in the system. And yes, we can, you can have a little whinge about favoritism or them being selected ahead of other players. But at the end of the day, these guys are ranked 20, 21 on the depth chart, like they're not
19, 20 man squad,
For a test squad, I'm kind of thinking generally across all formats. But the point is they're not ranked in the top 11 Aotearoa cricketers. So if we take ourselves out of the stat conundrum, it is interesting Jacob Duffy and Michael Bracewell have earned a Test squad call-up fresh off horrible Plunkett Shield campaigns. That is kind of interesting, but I think that just highlights the point, which is more interesting about how the Black Caps treat their cricketers. And if you compare the Black Caps to the White Ferns, these cricketers are valued by the Black Caps. Michael Bracewell, Jacob Duffy, Cameron Fletcher, Blair Tickner. These are all experienced.
Hamish Rutherford as well.
Hamish Rutherford, Dane Cleaver in the white ball stuff. These dudes have all played domestic cricket for a long time, and they are valued by the Black Caps. Whereas it was the opposite scenario for the White Ferns. The domestic cricketers who were among the best cricketers in Aotearoa were not valued by the White Ferns, and we saw how that played out. So I would rather have it this way than the other way. And the other way is, okay, who's someone who debuted last summer? Let's take him on the Test squad to England. Who's someone who averaged, 35 in a season? Fantastic. Let's call them up to the Black Caps Test squad. So I would rather have these selections that value players who are ready for international cricket right now and actually fit into the system. They, they share mana with a lot of the other the top tier Black Caps because they have been on the circuit for 10 years with those dudes. Like, there's familiarity there, there's comfort, and I'd say they're friends. So that's cool. And I'd just rather have it that way right now, given what the Black Caps are trying to do, than, okay, like think about last winter, you had Rachin Ravindra in this situation, selected in the Test squad to go to England. If you had multiple Rachin Ravindras in this Test squad, then it's a bit iffy, because it's like, what are they? Are they going to do anything? Have they warranted selection ahead of the other guys? It's just a bit weird. And that's how you create that bad juju, when you're not selecting the straight up and down best players. The argument against that is development of players, but we've got A tours, we've got domestic cricket. There are trusted pathways for development. So I think right now, just value the players who are mature, who can offer something right now, and integrate them into the setup, which I think is the case. So as funky as some of these stats are, I think we just got to appreciate that the players who actually offer value as far as their maturity and who they are fitting into the group are given an extended run, because some of them might not even play a test in the next 12 months either. So how can I complain about their squad selection if there's a low chance that they will actually play a test? It's a bit weird as well.
Yeah, and ultimately, sort of like I said before, like the guys who we're talking about who are in that category, that's sort of like the fringy selection category, are effectively on an A tour. Like they're going to play the warm-up games. They're not going to play the test matches unless they do amazing and work their way into it, in which case, if that happens, they've earned that call-up. They've done something to get selected. And like, when they cut that squad down to 15 for the test series, it's probably going to mean Bracewell, Duffy, who else we got here? Rutherford, Tickner, and maybe Ravindra. I'm not sure who the 15th, 16th man debate might be an interesting one. But like, one of the first things I did when I looked at that squad after seeing some of the names, I'm like, okay, but what does the first 11 look like? And it's just like, okay, Tom Latham, Will Young, Kane Williamson, Devon Conway, Henry Nichols, Tom Blundell, probably Colin de Gronholm, maybe Mitchell, maybe Bracewell or Ravindra if you wanted a spinning option, or Patel if you wanted the longer tail with a proper spinner, and then Jamison, Southey, Wagner, Bolt. Like, it's really, really easy to pick your first 11. It's pretty much, that is because, Taylor's retired, so you can't consider him. That is the first strength 11 now. That's what it is. That's what the Black Caps' best team looks like. Everyone's there. Everyone's available. come the actual test matches against England, and I don't think there'll be too much rotation in between tests. We'll probably get that from England because they love to rotate their bowlers around from test to test to test. Black Caps, not so much. They'll be, and they've said, like, because there's a bunch of limited over stuff after they're going to Ireland, they're playing, I think, Scotland and Netherlands and some 2020s as well. Like, they've said nobody is going to be, it's like a 14-week period. They've said, like, nobody is going to be there for the whole 14 weeks. So some guys will be coming in and out. I think the guys who play 3 test matches in a row are not going to be burdened with having to play a bunch of, T20s just on a tiki tour of Europe. They're not going to have to do that. Guys who don't get games there might well come back into contention for those matches. And guys like, Bracewell and Duff, we mentioned breaking into the team in shorter formats. Well, there is shorter format cricket to be played later on in this tour. So they might come home for a couple of weeks and go back and then play. Like they'll get games at some point on this. The first 11 is just incredibly easy to pick. So it's not one of the, I think it's probably good to look at this as like a hybrid squad, Like it's a 20-man extended squad. It's kind of half first, like all first choice test guys, and then a little bit of like the next tier, the NZA type hybrid stuff.
It's a pool party.
Yeah, it's a pool party. Bring your floaties.
It's the Blackcaps pool party, starting with a first 11 test series against England, ending with a first 11 T20 World Cup type of situation. In between, the pool party's on the road. Different blokes are going to be playing ODI cricket against Ireland, Netherlands, and Scotland. Everyone's going to have a turn. So who gives a fuck? As long as first 11 versus England, win all 3 of those tests, go win the T20 World Cup. Happy days. Everyone's chilling. So maybe we'll just work on that bit. I don't know if it's a pool party. It feels like a road show, traveling circus.
Yeah.
The hikoi, the OE. I don't know. There's a bunch of different terms we can label it, but we look forward to a winter of cricket. How fucking cool is that? Like, I'm excited. Yeah. We did have a bit of Warriors news wildcard in recent days as well, with apparently Kodi Nikorima on the move to the Rabbitohs in the least interesting news of the week. I don't know if that's an immediate move. Everything sounded like it was going to be an immediate move. And also you had the retirement of Ash Taylor, who, big it up to him. This is not a critique of Ash Taylor in any regard, but 11 missed tackles is still, I think, the most for the average missed tackles in the NRL, which is quite some feat. But obviously he was battling pretty heavy-duty hip injuries, so fair play. But it is he didn't do too much with the Warriors. So that is an honour bestowed upon him. So shout out Ash Taylor.
One and done, eh?
One game and retiring, for the Warriors.
I wonder how many other players have played one single game for the Warriors in history. I'm sure he's not the first one. There must be someone else made a debut in the last game of the season or something. And my mind just went into like Matrix mode where like old school Warriors names were just like floating down. And then I just, lost the plot in my mind as I went down nostalgia lane with the Warriors. So Kodi Nikorima might move on. Who fucking cares? Didn't really do much for the Warriors. There is there does seem to be quite a chasm between like people who believe Kodi Nikorima is really good, and I think people like us who just wish he did it every game. He doesn't do it every game, which makes him not as good as he could be. So the Warriors have lost 2 halves. Ash Taylor retires, Kodi Nikorima is departing. But I still think they've got enough cover there. Like Dejan Arce has come in, which is obviously a timely move. Maybe the Warriors knew that Kodi Nikorima was looking elsewhere. And so like the Rabbitohs, I think they signed Anthony Milford, but he had an issue off field.
So I don't think that contract got registered. So it's not surprising that they are then signing Cody Nikorima, because Demetriou was a Broncos assistant coach under Wayne Bennett, so easy connection there between Milford and Nikorima, as well as they obviously need a half. Because last year they had Benji Marshall and Adam Reynolds. So you didn't just lose Adam Reynolds, you also lost Benji Marshall, who was stepping in as a half when Adam Reynolds wasn't playing. For the Warriors, like, I think they've, like, yes, it doesn't look like they've got a lot of halves depth. And I don't know when Chanel Harris-Tavita's back. So if there is an issue right now, it could be a bit tricky. But, you know, the Warriors suck, and I'm sure they can someone can do a job in the halves. Like, let's not kid ourselves. This isn't the Warriors team needing a half for a grand final. This is a mediocre Warriors team just trying to stay afloat in the NRL. And if they need a half, I'm sure they can figure something out. They could put Reece Walsh in the halves. They could put someone at fullback. They could put Tohu Harris in as a half if they really fucking wanted to. Like, I don't really care what happens. Like, at the end of the day, as long as, like, there's a Sean Johnson there, it doesn't matter who's in the six. If they lose Sean Johnson, well, low expectations just got lower. So who cares? Warriors do play the Sharks this weekend. As you said, wildcard fresh after the Dragons get their touch up from the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, the weekly Storm 50-pointer.
Imagine, like, so think back to what we were talking about after the Warriors got smoked by the Storm, and then the Storm smoked the Knights. And if the Storms then smoked the Dragons, it does put some context around what happened for the Warriors. Like, I don't think I feel vindicated with how I responded to that loss. If I already feel vindicated, but if they do smoke your Dragons, I would feel even more vindicated. And the Storm, one of the best teams in the NRL, as said at the start of the podcast, did write about some of those Storm players from Aotearoa and what they're doing well. Also, shout out to Will Warbrick, who scored 3 tries in 50 minutes for the Sunshine Coast Falcons last round. I think he's got 6 tries in 4 games. And that came after I wrote about Will Warbrick a few weeks ago. So the update is 3 tries in 50 minutes. He's going all right. Would love to see him starting on the wing for the Melbourne Storm at some stage this season. This Warriors Sharks matchup's quite interesting, wildcard. Like, the Sharks everyone loves the Sharks. They're a, trendy team. They were defeated last week, and the Warriors sniffed out a 1-point victory. Warriors are a mediocre team. The Sharks are a rising team. So obviously the Sharks are favorites here. As far as Kiwi-NRL talent go, Michael Maguire still holds out hope that Siosifa Talakai might play for Aotearoa. I don't think he will. I think he definitely is going to play for New South Wales and Tonga, which is going to be useful given what we know about Tongan Rugby League. Also, shout out Tongan Rugby League. Far superior than Samoan Rugby League, even though everyone views them the same. Like, Samoa Rugby League, with all due respect, kind of silly. Tonga have had their issues with politicians and those types of people fucking it up for everyone else, but Samoa Rugby League has far longer issues. And those issues are going to keep going because they think they know best, and they keep, I don't know what the best way to say this is. They are very restrictive of what is possible for Samoan Rugby League. Like, it doesn't seem like they want to take chances on, like, the Johns brothers said they wanted to coach, and then Samoan Rugby League's like, nah, we know better than that. But that is to say, like, everyone views Samoa and Tonga as equals as far as rugby league goes. So they're like, oh, Samoa can do what Tonga does. Well, Tonga actually has systems in place. Tonga actually invests in these things. Tonga actually develops young players through Tongan Rugby League. Samoa are very political. They are very ingrained in certain values and restricting their talent. So shout out. And we have an update from Sonny Bill. He's also not involved in the Samoan coaching staff because that's not what he does. Like, always talks about wanting to play for Samoa and wanting to help out Samoa, but never actually puts his actions. He never actually played for Samoa. He isn't actually helping Samoa. He's just, doing his other thing. So I keep thinking about that. And I love Sonny Bull, though. But the Sharks, that's what I was talking about. Ronaldo Mulitalo could be effective for Aotearoa, or he could play for Samoa as well. You got Britton Nakora on the edge. No Braden Hamlin-Uele this week. And the Sharks do have a lot of Kiwi-NRL talent in their reserve grade. Guys like KL Iro, Tyler Slade, Mawene Hiroti. Those type of characters are going well with the Sharks. Surely the Warriors don't beat the Sharks this weekend, World Cup.
You reckon? I don't know. I mean, it feels like, because you said the bit at the start there about the Warriors not just not being a particularly good team, and objectively they're not really, and they have had a pretty cruisy just like fixture list to start the season. They've had a bunch of winnable games and they've won some of them, more of those than they've lost. They've also had two very difficult games against the Roosters and Storm. The Roosters weren't quite at their best, and that seems to be a bit of a pattern at the moment, because the Dragons beat them, a week later. Roosters maybe on a little bit of a downswing for a team who is generally pretty dominant, and the Warriors were really competitive with them. Storm, firing on all cylinders, absolutely crushed them. But I look at the table, and because I was writing this thing about the Breakers yesterday, and one of the notes to make was about because it's really easy to excuse a lot of the stuff that's like to come up with excuses for why the Breakers have been rubbish the last couple of years. And there's some very valid reasons too. Like the COVID stuff has been ruthless. Like, even if you forget about the fact that they had like some, they had a couple games where they had outbreaks and ruined the end of their preseason as well, which would have been a big hassle leading into the thing. Like, forget about that stuff and just focus on the fact that they didn't have a home game for the entire season. That alone, regardless of the off-field things, on-field, that's a burden enough. Like, that's bad enough in that situation. But a lot of these things suddenly, I think there was a phrase I used in there about how the Breakers feel like they've allowed themselves to be victims of their own circumstances. And the comparison I made is that, like, the exact same stuff is going on with the Warriors and with the Phoenix. And the Warriors, looking at the table, are actually 4-4. The Phoenix are 1 win away. Hopefully tonight they'll get that win. 1 win away from, or a Sydney FC loss. Comparatively, they might not have to get another point at all, but hopefully, if a win tonight, and that would book their place in the finals. And yeah, as I say, the Warriors 4-4. So suddenly the Breakers don't have so many excuses when other teams are doing objectively better in the same scenarios in other leagues. But the fact that the Warriors are 4-4 is an interesting one to think about, because it's like they don't feel like a particularly good team, but they have ground out some pretty decent wins. Like, not free flowing. Well, I mean, like, the win against the Raiders last week was a terrible game of rugby league, probably like matched and beaten in terms of the bad quality rugby league games that I watched on the weekend, matched and beaten only by Dragons Tigers, which was even worse. Dragons Tigers was fucking shocking. It was mistake after mistake with two teams who didn't know what they were doing. And then just the last 20 minutes, Ben Hunt does a couple nice things, and the Dragons just had a little bit of class when it mattered, and were able to grind that one out. But shocking game, especially the first hour. The Warriors-Raiders wasn't a very good game either, but the Warriors were the team that had just that little bit, with them it wasn't even really class as much as, like, just they grounded out. They scrapped their way through. Matt Lodge wins a penalty in front of the post late on. They kick the goal to take it to extra time. All the commentators complain about how it's not a penalty, it's real soft, blah, blah, blah. Wouldn't have given that in the 80s. I'm thinking, well, there's contact to the head. So, like, whether you think that's a penalty or not, that's completely 100% consistent with how the game is ruled in 2022. Like, that's always going to be a penalty. There was a bit of pizzazz with, I thought, Sean Johnson throwing in the sidestep field goal. That was pretty classy. But it wasn't a pretty game. But again, it's another one of those ones where they won. And they don't have a losing record right now. They're 4-4. And again, like they've played some easy games. And this is probably, one of the tougher ones they've had, like borderline the next toughest one they've had to that Storm game. We know how the Storm game went. So it might be one of those things where they just like, we find out where they really stand in here. But then at the same time, I don't entirely want to throw away the idea of like, the Warriors might not be terrible. They might not be that bad. I don't think they're anything better than I don't see them making the playoffs. So I'll say that much. But as it is, I remember something one of those things that you say quite often. It's like there's always a team worse than the Warriors. Every season, like they've never won a wooden spoon. There's always someone in more of a shambolic position. I think there's 3 or 4 teams at least this season. The Warriors aren't great, but they're also the kind of team who might be able to beat a team like the Sharks on their day if things click. And they should. They feel like a team that should get better as well as the season goes along. Like there's a few young. We've talked a few times about like the back line and how inexperienced the outside backs are. New combinations across the board, like that's a factor. All these half combinations, that's a factor. The more, for example, Johnson and Harris Tavita or Johnson and Asi or however it goes over the next few months, the more they play together, the better that combination will be. The forward pack actually looks quite decent, and they should, in about a month's time or so, have Tohu Harris back, who is a game changer for them. Like that's a completely overskilled guy in their forward pack who can hopefully take them to a different level. Like I don't see the Warriors making the top 8, but I'm open to the idea that they might actually be like a team around like that 9, 10, 11 kind of range rather than the 14, 15, 16 range.
That's the whole point, is they're always in the 9, 10, 11 range. That's that is my whole perception of the Warriors. But does feel like you are trying to generate some expectations around the Warriors, and I'm not here for that. 0 expectations.
Well, that's why I cut it off at the top 8 challenging thing. Let's not go too far.
I do say the Warriors suck, but that's because I've got 0 expectations. And this is all predicated around them being what they are, what they always have been. And I mean, they're 11th, 4-4. That is the Warriors. Like there's nothing new here. There's nothing new as far as good or bad. So it's cool. Like I have no issues there. I was reminded of something Nathan Brown said. I think he said after the Raiders win, like Rocco Berry, Viliami Vailea, and Ilyasar Katoa, they have played more NRL games than total rugby league games. So
it's kind of bonkers.
All 3 of them came straight out of first 15 rugby, and like Katoa did have a year or 2 of Jersey Flegg. So I think his number of NRL games has now surpassed the amount of like Jersey Flegg and reserve grade games he would have played. But then comes the pandemic, there's no reserve grade footy. So that actually applies better to Rocco Berry and Viliami Vailea, who are playing first 15 rugby. And then they come out of first 15 rugby, they come into the Warriors and they're thinking, sweet, got some reserve grade. Viliami Vailea was playing SG ball at the start of 2020. Get to wiggle into some rugby league, get to learn rugby league, get to play rugby league. Then they're playing NRL. And I think Katoa made his debut straight after the pandemic, so none of them have played in Aotearoa either. But as far as like just sitting with the Warriors, I think that's an idea to highlight here, is just sit with the Warriors as opposed to coming up with some dramatic ideas, because like even someone like Taniela Otakulo, we know the story here. He made his debut last season without playing reserve grade. So some of those players are just settling into their mahi. And There were Reece Walsh headlines this week, and that's cool. Like fantastic. You want to stay at the Warriors, that's all good, but you're also leading the Warriors for errors. That is to say that Reece Walsh is a very young rugby league player, and I don't know, like some of these Australian folks seem to think that the only Warriors player is Reece Walsh. I don't know if the Warriors will be worse if you put Rocco Berry at fullback. I think Viliami Vailea could play fullback. Like, that is to say, I think the Warriors would be okay without Reece Walsh. And he's also making a lot of errors. Like, he seems to kick out on the full for a kickoff every game. And he isn't necessarily dominating as he did last season. But my idea here is to sit with the Warriors and allow these players to brew. Like, let's just check in with Reece Walsh mid-season. Let's just see how he's going then. Instead of coming up with dramatic ideas about Vailea or Rocco Berry, let's just sit with them. Let's just enjoy their growth as Warriors players. Even someone like Dejan Arce, who now everyone thinks is the savior of the Warriors, let's just enjoy this dude playing for the Warriors. Let's just enjoy him building a combination with Sean Johnson and Reece Walsh. And I think that's a lot easier to do when you look at the forward pack. Whenua Blake, Matt Lodge. You're going to have Bunty Afoa coming off the bench. Aaron Penne's back this weekend. Jazz Tavanga is stringing some games together. So you at least know that it's a rugged forward pack. Like, it's not a soft forward pack by any stretch of the imagination. Led by Lodge. Like, we all know he's a bit of a dick, got a bit of a dark arts history, but that's what we want. We want a dick in the forward pack. We want a rugged forward pack. We want a forward pack that no one wants to fuck with. And Ben Murdoch-Masila came on the field last week and tried to start a fight straight away. Like, I'm not mad at that. That's all good. Like, that's what we want, because that's where footy starts, is in the forward pack, and that's quite solid. I still think there's this idea like line speed against the Warriors is really effective. It was effective for the Raiders for much of that game as well. So I don't think this like Warriors forward pack is dominant by any stretch of the imagination, but that's where the solid nature of the team is. And then we can sit with some of these other players and allow them to develop, allow them to brew, and give them space to do so, because you threw in the Breakers connection there. Anyone who says or talks about the Warriors and their junior systems and they don't get enough junior players from Aotearoa, well, they do a whole lot better than the Breakers. And these players are being developed by the Warriors in the most adverse scenario possible. Vailea and Rocco Berry haven't played an NRL game in Aotearoa, neither is Katoa. All their developments come in staying in another country. So just sit with it and enjoy the process of this Warriors team brewing through a season, which brings us back to the Sharks game. And yes, I think there's a chance they can win. I just don't want to set that expectation, though, you know?
Yeah, it's always the sit with it idea seems like a very good one right now, because they are a team that's like, I don't know if rebuilding is the right word, because they are, but that makes it sound like they're tearing things up. That's not where they're at. Like, they're at a process where they're trying to build things back. You know, they're on the other side of that. And yeah, like, you know, the Breakers are a good example also of an organization, as well as not being very good at developing New Zealand players anyway. Not so bad at developing French players, for what that's worth, which is a 5-23 record on the court, and maybe mentioned by Adrian Wojnarowski on his Twitter feed in a couple of weeks' time. If that's worth it, then sweet, but I'm not convinced. They're also, though, a good example of an organization that doesn't sit with it, that panics when they get off to a bad start. Oh no, this import is injured. Let's bring in an injury replacement. Okay, this guy's back to fitness now. Let's cut someone else so that we can keep this other replacement guy. Let's make a whole bunch of roster decisions all at once. They then sat with it by the end of the season because they had no choice, but that's because the season had been wasted. Like, they're not a team that seems to be very good at like just see it out, let things happen naturally, trust the process of whatever, with one exception, which is that the coach who has I think a 32-60 record as head coach has been extended twice since he was signed. So once picking up the contract option and then once just plain up given like a 2-year extension. So there's one aspect where the Breakers are very good at trusting the course that they're on, but only that one. The Warriors are in that place though, aren't they, where it's like you can see what they're trying to achieve and they're not there yet. And so you do have to take a step back a little bit and watch it through like just the wider lens and seeing acknowledging some of those points that you make about like guys who haven't even played a home game for this club yet and they've been there for a year and a half or whatever, and like the difficulties of developing at a time where you don't really have like a stable reserve grade team and you're having to like pull resources just to have a couple of guys getting to be able to play like reserve grade stuff. And that's tricky. That's difficult. That might end up being something where like a sink or swim situation, which might end up being better in the long run for some players. Like some players just thrive on adversity like that, but it takes time and it does take patience and patience means not overreacting to the week in, week out. They lose this, they lose 1 week, get thrashed, don't overreact and throw away everything you've been working on, like get back to the basics of what you're trying to achieve. And then, they win next week in a nice little golden point win, which happens, I'm sure, more in the NRL than any other league in the world, where a team can lose by like 50 1 week and then win exactly 1 week later. Like I'm sure the NRL in particular must lead all sporting organizations for that, just like that turnaround ability. Like a team got thrashed by 50, watch out for them next week because they're going to bounce back. I don't know how it happens, but it just keeps on happening. At least it feels like it does. And perception is reality, so if it feels like it is, then teams are going to react that way. So but yeah, just that sit on it thing with the Warriors, I think, is a pretty astute way to look at them, where it's like whatever they're trying to achieve, it's not going to be achieved in 1 week. It takes longer than that to develop guys. And this is not the year that anyone should be thinking about the Warriors as a team that can go and win a finals game. But maybe next year or the year after could be, if they make the right kind of progress this year, which requires, again, like just getting past the week in, week out overreactions with each round and just like looking at the bigger picture, right?
Even more so when you look at the next 3 games, they got the Sharks, Rabbitohs, and Dragons. All 3 of those games, in my mind, I'm thinking Warriors can win those games and they can lose those games. After that, they play the Knights. So right now I'm thinking easy mahi, fuck the Knights, they're shit. And even that Raiders game, like all the Raiders did what they've done all season. Get out to a lead, look pretty good, and then fuck it up. So, like, all good. Now they're playing 3 teams that are... Sharks are quite good. Rabbitohs are transitioning. Who knows what they're going to do? Dragons are always pretty solid, aggressive, and a tough matchup for the Warriors. So these 3 games could go either way. And if the Warriors go 3-0, we're going to learn something about the Warriors. But I don't think that's realistic to lay that out publicly. So I think the best way to view this period is just detach from the results and sit with it, because these games could go either way. And like, we're always learning, Shoshin mindset, you're always learning, always growing, but I don't know if we're going to learn too much from the Warriors in this 3-game stretch, as opposed to like some of the other games later on in the season, because that's when you get the matchups against the lower ranked teams and the higher ranked teams. And you're like, okay, the Warriors, they always beat the lower teams. They always lose to the top teams. The Sharks are a top team, but they're coming off a loss. I don't think the Rabbitohs are a top team, and I don't think the Dragons are a top team. They're kind of in the wider middle bracket that the Warriors sit in as well. So it is a very interesting stage of the season for the Warriors with this 3-game stretch. And Saturday 6 p.m., Saturday 5 p.m., Saturday 5 p.m., or sorry, Sunday 6 p.m., Saturday 5 p.m., Saturday 5 p.m. Set your alarm clocks, because 6 p.m. and 5 p.m. on a Saturday and Sunday isn't the worst. You got any other rugby league ideas floating around your noggin, Wildcard? Or if you want to finish with a bit of football, we can do that. How are you feeling?
We could probably do a little bit of football. I wouldn't say no to that proposition. Anything in particular?
Well, so we know the Phoenix are playing tonight. Is that a must-win game? Just to, if someone's listening to it tomorrow, they can reflect on
seats. It is not a must-win game because they're probably going to make the finals now. It was who was it? So Newcastle beat someone, MacArthur it was, earlier on, like during the midweek, which means that MacArthur now can't catch the Phoenix, which means that the only team left that can is Sydney FC, who have 2 games left to play. I think both, because they've been away in the Asian Champions League. They've got to come back and win both those games to have a chance of overtaking the Phoenix. And the Phoenix have, I think, 3 games left. It might be, and I'll check this as I say it, but they just have to win one game over the rest of the season will get them in. The Phoenix play, Western Sydney. They're all away games. Western Sydney away tonight. Melbourne City away on Monday, and I think that is it. Actually, they've got 2 games left because they played Victory a few days back. So, I still don't want to throw, because the thing is who have Sydney got actually? Let me check. They have got Melbourne Victory and at home, and then Brisbane Roar away. So the Victory haven't lost a game since the Phoenix beat them about 3 months ago or something. So that's a tough game. Sydney FC are going to struggle coming off of the Asian Champions League and a bunch of games in a row there. So, the Phoenix, I think, will probably make the finals whether they win, lose, or draw against Western Sydney Wanderers. But it is a good opportunity for them to get a win. They beat them 1-0 at Eden Park, same team. That was a very close game, though. Wanderers missed a penalty and had a bunch of chances in the second half at the woodwork a few times. So they could easily have gone the other way. But if the Phoenix can win that, and then can maybe take some points of Melbourne City, although Melbourne City lost last night, which means that that's not a good result for Phoenix, because it means that they're going to have to win that game in order to win the minor premiership. So that's going to be a stacked City team. We're not going to get the luck of getting to play a rotated team before the finals or anything like that. So trickiness if they want to get up to 4th. That might have got away with them because they're 4 points behind Adelaide with a game in hand. So it's possible still. 4th, of course, would mean a home semi-final. So that probably is not going to happen now. They probably needed to beat Melbourne Victory if that was going to be the case. But yeah, they're well set up. The fact they're going to make the playoffs, barring something a little bit dramatic over the last week and a half of the regular season here, is a really, really astounding achievement should they be able to get that done. If that happens with everything they've gone through, to finish in the top half of the table and to be able to play a finals game, I think would just be an incredible, just a really, really incredible achievement. A masterclass in coaching from Ufuk Talai, who I think is the centerpiece of that whole achievement there. To battle through the lack of home games up until recently, and even then they got thrashed in one of those home games that they got. The sheer levels of injuries that they've had, the fact that they've been playing under strength the whole season because they haven't been able to fill out their import allotment. They've still got a spare import spot there, and one of the guys that's been there from the start is Gary Hooper, and he's basically been injured the whole season. Has hopefully played off the bench last game. Hopefully will be able to be a factor the rest of the way, but hasn't been a factor for most of the. He's only played I think he's only made 6 starts. They had that not losing streak, but winless streak at the start of the season. They've had 2 separate outbreaks of COVID within the squad. It's a young team stacked with academy players. It's none of those things, when you add it all together, none of that suggests a team that should be anything other than competing for the wooden spoon. And they're probably going to finish in the top half of the table and make the finals. I just think that's an incredible achievement for that club. Knock on wood.
Big up the Wellington Phoenix. Maybe the Warriors will.
They might do it too. Who knows?
Yeah, emulating what the Phoenix have done. Also, mad respect to the Phoenix. Obviously, we had the women's team stepping into the A-League as well. So really good times, let's just say. Good times for the Wellington Phoenix, and perhaps could get a bit better over the coming weeks as well. Let's finish there. We'll be delivering the email newsletter tomorrow with a whole stack of Aotearoa sporting stuff. And then we'll be back with the cricket podcast, recapping the epic Will Young versus Colin de Grandhomme encounter for Patreon, and a variety show on Tuesday as well. Kia kaha, stay beautiful, cheer.